All right. Well, aloha, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Nova Baha'i Center Sunday morning program. Today we have a wonderful guest, and we will introduce her later on in the program. But in the meantime, today's program will be recorded, and we will start with our morning devotionals.
Blessed is the spot and the house and the place and the city and the heart and the mountain and the refuge and the cave and the valley and the land and the sea and the island and the meadow where mention of God hath been made and his praise glorified. Ooh.
Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants. Oh my God, reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor and grant them strength to serve thee.
Oh God, what we need is strength. They say the grass is greener on the other side, across the fence, but we defeat the trends when we realize we need to send a message to where our souls used to dwell. Oh God, leave us not to ourselves, lost in these spells. We need your guidance from the well, spring of your laws. Let us sing for your cause.
May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor and grant them strength to serve thee.
When the dark is near and your spark is fear, unite through your light, let the hearts be cheered. When evil is revered and good is just weird, only together with our helper and our Lord we persevere. Oh God, guide our steps through thy knowledge. We have no trouble here identifying problems. Since your commandments remain solid, then only through your love can we expect to find solace.
May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor and grant them strength to serve thee. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor and grant them strength to serve thee. Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants.
We gotta shift the mindset and go from awareness to action. We gotta shift the mindset and let it be one powerful chain reaction. We're living in a world where kids are getting snatched and forced into dark corners of porn, raped and beat senseless, internally torn, behind closed doors, giving away their bodies once more. No idea there's something greater that they could be living for. We gotta shift the mindset, because it only becomes a problem when it happens to another family member. So imagine if that was your son, your daughter, then it would be a different transaction. We gotta shift the mindset, come correct, and stop thinking that this has nothing to do with us. It's time to confront and expunge the pride, the greed, the envy, the gluttony and lust. We say that it all seems endless, so why bother? The real question is, how can we allow this to go on any longer? We gotta shift the mindset and stop thinking that we're outnumbered, cause saving the life of one means one less soul that no longer has to suffer. We gotta shift the mindset, cause this isn't a battle that can easily be won. But let's be the swords and shields with our weapons raised up as we fight as one. As we fight for healing, fight for freedom, fight for the voiceless, fight for the future right here, right now in this moment. We gotta shift the mindset and bring war to the enemy's doorstep. Change the dialogue and subject. Does anybody object? We must be willing to face this great threat. Children are being reduced to mere objects. Oh my God, it's imperative that we change the narrative. Flip the script, the ending now has unlikely heroes and heroines. We gotta shift the mindset. In the chaos, there can be comfort. Cause saving the life of one means one less soul that no longer has to suffer.
Cette alliance divine et tous les Baha'i devraient se tourner vers Abdullah. Les Baha'i devraient se tourner vers Abdullah.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes a planet looked like an Earthrise, a blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, our first chance to see a shared reality, a declared stance, and a commonality, a glimpse into our planet's mirror. And as threats drew nearer, our own urgency became clearer as we realized that we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climactic changes some say will just go away, while some simply pray to survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor who, when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality where, despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marvel, this little true marvel, to master the verve and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give next generations the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training in sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal should be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dots, we will fail you not. Just as we chose to go to the moon, we know it's never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. We do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary. Because with every dawn we carry the weight of the fates of this celestial body orbiting a star, and as heavy as that weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but it keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of an Earthrise. To see it, close your eyes, visualize that all of us in this room and outside of these walls or in these halls, all of us change makers, or in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space, and we see the face of a planet anew. We relish the view, we witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes, know the future of this wise planet is right in sight, right in all of us. Trust this earth uprising, all of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is our hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
Human family. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy, some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse bemused delight, brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane. I've not seen any two who really were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We love and lose in China, we weep on England's moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea, and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways we differ, in major we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. Human family.
My home is the home of peace. My home is the home of joy and delight. My home is the home of laughter and exaltation.
Mi hogar es el hogar de la paz. Mi hogar es el hogar de la alegría y el deleite. Mi hogar es el hogar de la risa y el regocijo.
Whosoever enters through the portals of this home must go out with gladsome heart.
This is the home of light.
Whosoever enters here must become illumined. My home is the home of peace.
Mi hogar es el hogar de la paz.
Home is the home of joy and delight. My home is the home of laughter and exaltation. My home is a home of peace.
Thank you, Paria, for those selections. Hello, friends and family. I just want to join you again today to the Nova Baha'i Center Sunday morning program. Today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest speaker, Miss Sovaida Mayani Ewing, and she will be speaking with us about the looming disasters or golden opportunity, why mindset matters. Sovaida Mayani Ewing is an author, speaker, international lawyer, and founding director of the Center for Peace and Global Governance. Also, you can look that up at cpgg.org, a virtual think tank and online forum that pulls and proposes principled solutions to pressing global problems through publications, podcasts, videos, lectures, and online courses. Ms. Mayani Ewing is an international lawyer with 18 years of experience in private and government practice, both in England as a barrister at law in the United States as a licensed attorney. For the past 18 years, she has been working as an independent scholar writing, lecturing in the area of global governance and collective security. She also hosts a weekly video podcast entitled Reimagining Our World that infuses hope into those who are worried, anxious, and depressed about the state of the world by offering a compelling vision of a more peaceful and just world we can choose to build the steps necessary to achieve and get there. Ms. Mayani Ewing was born into a Baha'i pioneer family in Kenya. She grew up in Nairobi, Kenya, and Haifa, Israel, where her mother was called to serve at the Baha'i World Center. Sovaida has served on the National Youth Committee of the United Kingdom and as an assistant to the Auxiliary Board in London and Cambridge. She has also served on the board of the Baha'i Justice Society in the United States, as well as the Baha'i representative on the board of the Metropolitan Interfaith Council of Washington, D.C. She has lived on 4 continents and speaks several languages. So without further ado, let's welcome our wonderful sister in the faith, Sovaida Mayani Ewing.
Thank you, Nikia, for that very gracious introduction. And I love those last words were perfect. Sister in the faith, yes. All right, well, I'm delighted to see those of you souls who are up on a Sunday morning here in the Northeast of the United States. And I look forward to having this conversation with you, sharing some thoughts, and then getting some discussion going. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. I'm always torn between whether to use a PowerPoint or not. I love to see your faces, but I also know that people like to have something to focus on. So I've prepared a very short PowerPoint presentation just for those of you who like to have something visual to keep you on track. So I'm going to start this and hopefully we'll do it properly. There we go. All right, fantastic. Okay, so the question is looming disaster or golden opportunity? When we look at our world, that's the question, right? COVID, is it looming disaster or golden opportunity? Climate change, is it looming disaster or golden opportunity? And as we answer this question together, looking at why mindset matters so much. And thank you, Paria, for picking such wonderful segments at the beginning as part of the devotional. I loved actually all of them, but 2 spoke particularly and connected, and you will see how with the presentation. One was the wonderful rapper who talked about mindset, that we need to shift our mindset, right? So that was his theme. We need to shift our mindset. That was the refrain. And then Amanda Gorman, who talked about hope and about the fact that we have to do something now. It's an imperative. Okay, and the reason those resonated with me, because that's what I've been thinking and talking about for the last year, because of the book I've written about the alchemy of peace, which is all about shifting mindsets and habits to achieve world peace. And also because I really feel that our job, first and foremost, is to infuse hope amongst our fellow our colleagues, our neighbors, our friends, our family, because so many people are despondent and we simply get paralyzed when we're despondent. So let's move on and see how this all is unpacked. So when we look at our world around us, we have 2 typical reactions when we look at the disasters facing us. And we see, as I said, the disasters, if you just want to look at two of them, focus in COVID, that we're all still grappling with, along with the economic recession, and the harm to health, to pocketbook, to relations, and then we have climate change with our droughts, our famines, our storms, our fires, the flooding, and all the disasters that ensue, again, in terms of both health and economy with respect to that, and our mental well-being. So our typical reaction when we look at all these disasters is one of two things. We tend to typically either say, oh my gosh, we're at the mercy of these events, and they're just totally uncontrollable. They're coming out of left field. You know, where did this virus come from? We still haven't figured it out. And does that mean it's going to happen again? And in fact, scientists tell us, yes, it is. We're going to get more and more of these pandemics, more and more and more, especially as climate change gets to be a bigger problem. So we end up feeling like we're victims of our circumstances. And the message that we're giving ourselves is, the thought is, I'm helpless, or we're helpless as a global community. And therefore, anything we do is futile. No matter what action we take, it's not going to make a difference. Now, what do you think happens when you think that way? We tend to avoid making decisions. Look at our world leaders. They avoid making decisions. They procrastinate. They make decisions too late. Look at climate change. We've known it's a problem that is going to literally threaten the existence of humanity for years. And yet our leaders have proven themselves thus far unable to galvanize around this topic and to come up with certain binding decisions about what they're going to do. And in fact, I just read an article in the paper a couple of days ago about how China is desperate for energy. And so she has started allowing new coal mines to be opened. I mean, we live in crazy times, but all countries are doing this, you know, gas production and fracking and coal mining and using fossil fuels and oil. It's as though we've stuck our heads in the sand. So we dither, we procrastinate when we feel like we're victims. When we make decisions, again, look at our leaders, but look at your own lives. When you make a decision, it's kind of half-hearted, half-baked, it's too little, too late. And ultimately, it leads to complete apathy, lethargy, and paralysis. And when, as Amanda Gorman says, when we are living in a world that is threatened, we simply can't afford to be paralyzed. Doing nothing is not an option, right? It's not sustainable, because the alternative of doing nothing means that we will self-destruct. So what? Or our kids are going to have absolutely abysmal lives. So we have to do something. Now, the second typical reaction we have in these circumstances, if we're not feeling like victims, the other place people come from, and you saw this also with the rapper in the second half of his rapping presentation, is that someone else is to blame, something else is to blame. Therefore, you know, we're suspicious of others, we're angry at others because they haven't done the right thing. Therefore, the emotion is we're angry and we're ready to fight. And he actually uses the word of taking the fight to the enemy. You know, this isn't right. So let me stop here for a moment and say, let me make it very plain that I am not in any sense saying that racism is something, especially structural anti-Black racism, to put it very clearly in this country, is anything we should condone. Absolutely not. It is completely unjust. It's a complete distortion of the human spirit, of our reality, as Maya Angelou so beautifully puts it, that we're really far more alike than we're different, and we're different in really very superficial ways that are meaningless, only actually in ways that add beauty and diversity to the human condition. So what I'm not talking about the need to address, to stand up to injustice, to address injustice, and to actually solve it at root. I am, however, talking about anger and fighting and being in a mode of conflict, because conflict doesn't ultimately get us anywhere. And both of these modes, either feeling I'm a victim or someone else is to blame, I'm therefore angry, defiant, and willing to be aggressive and in conflict, they're both self-destructive modes of being. And if we have any doubt about that, look at the history of our world. Take any country, look at its history. Whenever there's been conflict and anger is a way of solving problems, those problems don't actually get solved at root. One party ends up dominating simply because they're temporarily stronger. They happen to be. But as soon as the tables turn and the other party becomes stronger, they will dominate, oppress, and squash. So we want to get past this whole idea of winning and oppressing and dominating. Okay, so these are our typical reactions. Now, where do these reactions come from? They essentially stem from the way we think about and interpret our reality and the way we think about what's going on and the way we understand it. In other words, as this slide says, what meaning do we ascribe to our reality? Now, there are three fundamentally destructive interpretations that most human beings tend to have, unbeknownst to themselves, and which are, I believe, and based on the Baha'i writings, at the root of our problems. Here are the three, and I've listed them on this slide so you can follow along. The first is that humans are sinful, aggressive, and incorrigible by nature. Wow. Now think of that. As a human being, if you thought about yourself as a person that you're sinful, that you're aggressive, that you're never going to change, and that you've just always been this way, it's in your DNA somehow, and you're always going to be this way, how would you feel about yourself? How would your self-esteem be doing? I would submit it would be doing pretty poorly. And you would feel very depressed and sort of give up before you even tried anything, because you think, what's the point? You see how it feeds into one of those two mindsets we talked about, this feeling of, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. Everything's futile. It's all out of my control. I am a victim, right? This stems from, so when we look at our world and we look at the relations, the poor relations between states, and we look at wars, and we say to ourselves, humanity as a whole is sinful, aggressive, incorrigible. We're always going to be at war. We're always going to be at loggerheads. What does that do to our collective self-esteem? It's very low, right? And it means that we're not going to bother lifting a finger to do anything, because we fundamentally don't believe that anything's ever going to change. Now, the second fundamentally destructive mindset literally just means way of thinking, is that we're victims of uncontrollable events and purposeless suffering. We look at COVID and we say, yeah, see, this is a prime example. It just came out of the blue. We look at climate change and say, see, we didn't ask for climate change. We didn't realize as we were developing economically that we were causing this problem. We're victims. Again, it gives us that victim mentality. I'm out of control. There's nothing I can do. It's all pointless. The third very destructive mindset is to think that we have, as a whole, as a human race, irrevocably failed. Again, if you look at it in your personal life, let's say you go through a marriage and a divorce. If you sit there and tell yourself, okay, I've failed, that's it, I've destroyed the lives of my kids, I've destroyed my own life, nothing will be the same again, then you are going to get depressed, and it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? As opposed to thinking, well, gosh, I learned a bunch of really good lessons here. I achieved a lot of growth, and now I have an opportunity to move forward with my life a lot wiser than I was before. So let's move on and see what we can, why, getting to the question, why mindset matters. So mindset is really a way of thinking about things and a way of interpreting our world. The picture you see of the glasses, the colored glasses, are really the perfect way for understanding this. If I were to wear this pair of glasses, the top part, as you see, is more kind of pink and rosy. Everything I look at in the world, everything, whether I'm doing my work, so the work, whether I'm looking at my colleagues, whether I'm looking at the environment, whether I'm looking at my children or my spouse or my mother or so on, I see everything through a rose-colored tint, right? Or if I look through the blue part at the bottom, I see everything with a bluish tint. We each have certain filters, internal filters, through which we look at life and understand our own reality. And as a collective whole, we're a bunch of individuals, right? We tend to have certain collective filters through which we view realities. We just looked at 3 of the most destructive filters. These lenses or filters through which we look at reality come from our beliefs, from our cultures, from our families. Each of us has certain family sayings and values and ways of thinking. It comes from the media, and they basically shape these filters. Now, what's really important to understand is that these filters are usually unconscious. We're not aware that they're there. They're kind of like the operating system of a computer. You know, as we use this computer, as this technology through which we're broadcasting this Zoom, we don't know all the code that was written or the operating system and how it's working for us to be able to see each other's pictures or to look at this shared screen. We're just using it. And it's the same thing with life. As we go through life, we don't know, as we think certain things or feel sad or happy or excited or anxious, we don't realize that it is certain internal tapes that we're playing that are causing us to have these emotional reactions that are then followed by habits. So if I'm feeling depressed, what am I going to be doing? I'm going to be lying on the couch, watching TV, eating potato chips, eating tubs of ice cream, kind of not wanting to see other people. So my habits, what I do with my life, is going to depend on how I feel. And what I feel is going to depend on these lenses through which I'm viewing reality. Now, humanity as a whole also has these lenses. For instance, if human beings believe that resources or things are scarce in life, what are they going to do? They're going to act competitively, like with the vaccine. Oh, you know what? We better make sure the people of our country get vaccines. So we're going to buy up as many vaccines as we can. In fact, we're going to buy up 3 times the amount that we need just to make sure that all Americans get vaccinated. But we're not going to pay attention to what goes on in Africa or Asia or Latin America or other parts of the world. We let those people fend for themselves because of our misunderstanding of the condition of the human race. So a scarcity mindset breeds competition. Now, if we were to flip that, and again, remember that word, flip the script. That's what the rapper said when we were talking about, flip the script. I love that phrase. If we were to flip the script and say, hey, human beings are actually, things are not scarce. Life is full of abundance. Our world is abundant. If we had that mindset, what would happen is we would start then working together collaboratively to find all the solutions, to work together and say, hey, you know what? We need X billion doses of the vaccine. Let all nations collaborate. The scientists already did that, right? They showed us how to do it. Scientists from around the world collaborated and did something unbelievable, never done before. The average time for creating a vaccine, a single vaccine, is 12 to 14 years. That's the way it's been historically. This time with COVID, scientists were able to produce a vaccine in 11 months, and not just one vaccine. Several different groups of companies came up with several different vaccines. You got the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer and Moderna, and then you've got a bunch of the Chinese ones, and you got the Russian ones, and on and on and on. And they all did that within basically 11 months. That's astounding, but it also demonstrates the power of collaboration. Okay, so we now want to look and see how we can reshape and reframe our understanding from those three destructive mindsets to something that is more empowering and will help us to actually solve the problems we have, like COVID, which is still ongoing, because we know that if we don't vaccinate all the peoples of the world soon, we're going to get more mutations, far worse than the Delta variant. And at some point, scientists warn us, just as they've been warning us and we haven't been listening, let's hope we'll listen. They're warning us that we will see variants, likely to see variants that will evade the vaccines, so that even those of us here in America, we're going to have to start from scratch because our vaccines are going to be worthless if we get a mutation that evades the vaccine. So we're back to square one, and then we got to start this all over again until we learn the lesson of collaborating and working together and ensuring that and understanding that each one of us is only as safe as all of us are together. So what is the first flip in the script that we can do, right? I love that phrase. Something that I, in my latest book called The Alchemy of Peace, is called the maturation analysis. And it is basically based on this idea from the Baha'i writings that helps us understand what we're going through and what's actually happening with humanity. In other words, we are not incorrigibly selfish, sinful, aggressive, and prone to conflict. We're not forever going to be in war. The only thing that's happening is that humanity as a whole has been going through a process of growth and evolution from infanthood until adulthood. And just as a child goes through stages, and we don't castigate or chastise the child for falling down when it's trying to walk, from crawling to walking, and we don't castigate our adolescents as they experiment and flirt with absolutely dangerous, reckless, and disastrous behavior, including for many in our society. We know people experiment with drugs and alcohol and, sexual experimentation. We don't throw them out of the house because we recognize it's just a phase in their growth and that they will then get to the stage of maturity. So having this mindset when we think about our collective reality helps us to explain our past and present and recognize that the past and present doesn't define who we need to be in the future. It also injects us with hope. Instead of being paralyzed by, oh, we've always been the same, nothing's ever going to change, we say, no, this was who we were when we were immature, and now it's time to move on. And then we ask ourselves the questions, what do we need to do to demonstrate that maturity? And as a global community, it involves asking, what kinds of institutions do we need to build, and what kinds of principles do we need to agree on in order to create a global community that is safe and secure, where we don't have the threat of nuclear war hanging over us, where we don't have the threat of pandemics, where we've got climate change ameliorated, and we can arrest our burning of fossil fuels and the destruction of the environment. So having this viewpoint makes us hopeful because we think, yay, good news, next stop is maturity. Now, the second flip in the script is what I call in my book, The Alchemy of Peace, the Phoenix effect. Now you're going to look at the slide and say, it says the Phoenix effect, and then you're going to have a picture of the butterfly at the bottom. So the main, hello? Have I lost all of you?
I still hear you, but the screen is, I think, something else.
Yeah, something changed.
We're viewing Parsa's screen. I think
okay,
whoever's sharing their screen needs to stop.
How's
sharing. That? Yeah, it's back.
All right, sorry about that.
Thank you.
So birthing. So the main idea here is that birthing, giving birth to something new, is a messy process. and yet the results are worthwhile. So let's take a brief look at the story of what happens with a butterfly. So the butterfly starts its life as a caterpillar. The caterpillar is this slow, earthbound, moving creature that is crawling along, trying to eat basically as much as it can. It gorges itself, it grows, and eventually has to shed its skin. It continues to eating. It grows and grows. I keep thinking of humanity. You know, we're so materialistic. We consume, consume, consume. We keep destroying our environment. We consume, consume, consume some more. We hit a ceiling. We have our fires and droughts, and we think, that's okay. We keep going, right? So at some point, the caterpillar cocoons itself. Once it's in the cocoon, something really interesting starts to happen. It starts exuding these enzymes that literally start to eat its body up. So it's like, think of acid type stuff. It kind of basically starts to eat itself while in the cocoon. It's a disgusting process. It's messy, it's smelly. If you were to poke a hole in the cocoon, it would be gooey and horrible and yucky, and we would all express disgust. However, at the same time, the middle of all this goop, the caterpillar, unbeknownst to us and unseen to our eyes, had within it certain groups of cells that are called imaginal discs. And each group of cells actually is a corollary, it is a part of the butterfly to come. And the groups of cells are very small when they're inside the caterpillar. But as this destructive process in the cocoon starts to take place, simultaneously, these imaginal discs start to multiply and grow and grow and grow and grow rapidly. And they grow until they form the different parts of the butterfly. So here then you have these dual processes of disintegration and integration, which are described perfectly in the Baha'i writings as the dual processes that were released as a result of the energies that Baha'u'llah's revelation brought to this planet. And the goal of both of these is to accelerate, and in the process of accelerating, both of them remove the obstacles that are preventing humanity from achieving maturity. So back to our first idea of humanity going through growth, standing at the threshold of maturity, going through a turbulent adolescence, the things standing in our way, like nationalism and xenophobia and racism and gender prejudice and all of these, inequality of men and women, these are all barriers, prejudices of various kinds. These have to be swept away. And these twin processes are great ways, I say, to understand it for me, and I hope it'll be helpful to you, is to remember this analogy of the butterfly. When it is ready, all of a sudden out of the cocoon comes what? The butterfly. And then we've got a different order of being. We've got a being that no longer crawls on the earth, is not heavy, is not gorging itself constantly. It's flying. It has, and is therefore has a perspective that is far different from that of the caterpillar. It can see more, it can travel more, it is more aware, it has more capacities and more abilities. So it is with us human beings, as we're going through this very destructive process, and we're all very aware of the disintegration part of the process. But the good news is that simultaneously, there are many movements of integration going on. So for instance, at the moment, there are many organizations around the world that are collaborating on ways to achieve peace. There's a global movement for the reform of the United Nations. The Secretary General of the United Nations, starting about 1.5 years ago, started reaching out to all the peoples of the world, basically, created forms that anyone, anywhere could fill out and say, this is what we'd like to see the UN focusing on. And on the basis of all this input, he came up with a report called Our Common Agenda that was submitted in September of this year, in other words, last month, to the UN General Assembly. We've had these global movements against racism, right? Starting with the protests in the United States of America. It was amazing and fascinating and wonderful and exhilarating that these protests sparked similar protests all around the world, everywhere, in every continent, with people standing in solidarity saying, hey, enough is enough. This is ridiculous. We need to get past this. So, and the scientists, in my mind, really also won the day with their levels of collaboration. So I don't know if you're aware, but prior to COVID, when scientists wanted to work on something, they were very secretive about it because every group of scientists and every individual scientist wanted to get the rewards for discovering something. So for discovering a new vaccine or for inventing a new vaccine. This time, and there are amazing articles, many of them said, never mind our egos or nationality, we're going to collaborate across national boundaries. We're not going to wait until our papers get published and our names get out there. As soon as we come up with a piece of information, we're going to share it with all the other scientists so that they can noodle it and they can give us feedback. And this is this massive global collaborative project that yielded incredible results where everyone put their egos aside and said, okay, it's not about me and my name. You know, humanity's destiny is at stake here. So to me, they're our heroes because they're role modeling for us exactly how we need to be. And frankly, they're role modeling for us how our leaders need to be, our political leaders who are way behind the 8 ball, who are not doing this, and who are so far have been abjectly failing us in terms of climate change and COVID. So now let's move on to the next thing. The next mind shift that needs to happen is the way we perceive the role of suffering. So we tend to think, oh gosh, we're suffering, woe is us, we're back to victim mode. Oh, I'm suffering, life is terrible. And it is. I don't mean to diminish. Look, when one has contracted COVID or somebody you know has died of COVID, or they've got long haul COVID, or they've lost jobs, or there is no doubt that people are suffering, or with climate change too. And yet there is a different perspective to add on. And that is the fact that all of this suffering has a purpose and does have meaning. It's not meaningless suffering. It is there to wake us all up fundamentally and to purge, to purify, and prepare us for new ways of thinking and behaving. And the analogy is one that you can see on this slide. You know, when you want to plant a new field of crops or a new garden, you can't just plant on top of everything else that's already there. You got to clean the earth, remove the weeds, remove all the old stuff, throw it out, hoe, turn over the earth, make sure the nutrients are coming to the top. So, you know, you have a good mix, and then you plant the seed. And the same is true with us. If we want to create a world that is just, that is based on the principles of fairness, equity, oneness, in which the poor and the marginalized don't suffer, in which we're safe and secure and not constantly worried about being harmed in some way, we have to change. We have to throw out our old ways of thinking and our old ways of doing, because the doing flows from the thinking. What we do is based on how we think, and that is our mindset. So we need to identify the old mindsets, pull them out if they're not serving us, throw them away, and then plant new mindsets. This is really, again, what the alchemy of peace is all about, is identifying old mindsets, removing them, proposing new mindsets to replace them, and then adopting new habits, throwing out the old habits that flowed from the old ways of thinking and adopting new habits that come from the new ways of thinking. So another role of suffering, according to the Baha'i writings, is that it will instill in our leaders the sense of responsibility that they need to deal with our problems today. I find that really interesting, because as we look at our leaders today, many of them lack that sense of responsibility. They're too concerned about being reelected, right? That's where their primary responsibility is. And what they need to be doing is thinking about what benefits not only the people of their country, but humanity as a whole. The other role of suffering is that it causes fusion. It causes us to, it's this slide, to weld the disparate components of our society into one organic, indivisible whole. Suffering also has the benefit of, here is a sequence of things that happens with suffering. And these are actually laid out in the Baha'i writings, and I find them fascinating. The Baha'i writings say that suffering will cause humanity to become disillusioned. Are we seeing that? Yes. Are our friends disillusioned? Yes. That disillusionment is coupled with a second thing, and that is a stirring of our conscience. Are we seeing that? Yes. To me, the protests against racism were a prime example of the conscience of human beings everywhere around the world being stirred. And then the third step is, once we're so disillusioned and our conscience has been stirred, that we will resolve to radically reconceptualize what we mean by society. And we started to see the beginnings of that. Like in this country, we started having conversations about reconceptualizing the role of police, right? That's an amazing conversation to be having. And it's just a beginning. We're also starting to have conversations about reconceptualizing the role of parties. Because political parties are now causing so much polarization and division that they're tearing apart the fabric of the country as opposed to building something up. So there are lots of movements, again, afoot, where we're starting to radically reconceptualize. And suffering also infuses in us new capacities and tools. So like this iron that's put in the fire, when you take two pieces of metal, they're cold and hard and rigid. In order to get them to meld, you need to apply intense heat. When you apply intense heat, the metal itself changes. It becomes supple and softer and malleable, and the color of the iron changes. It becomes warmer and redder, and it becomes warm. It goes from being cold and rigid to warm and malleable. So as with the butterfly, again, we saw the new capacities in the butterfly, so different from the caterpillar. So all of this suffering leads to these new capacities. And ultimately, these capacities lead us to understand that we are one as a human race. Now, the last reframing or the flipping of script that we need to engage in to replace those old three destructive mindsets that we talked about at the beginning is something I call the opportunity advantage. And what it means is that in moments of crisis, being creative enough to find a new way of doing things, what Sean Aker, a famous Harvard psychologist, calls the third path. So he says, he notes and observes something interesting. He says, we all psychologists know that when human beings get into crisis, we tend to do one of two things. We either do more of the same thing. Have you noticed that in your own life? You know, you get into trouble with something, there's a behavior, it's not working, and you realize you're in trouble, but your first inclination is, if I just do more of this and work harder at it, then maybe I'll get there. And it's not the answer. I'll think of an example in a minute, but we either do more of the same, or we pull back, we fall back a couple of steps, and we undo some of the progress we've done, thinking, oh, maybe I've been going too far too fast, and then we slow down, and then of course the problem gets bigger. He says, instead of doing that, we need to find a new way of doing things to catapult ourselves out of the crisis in which we're in to a new way of doing things. All right. one of the greatest opportunities that we have in this time of current crisis with COVID and climate change is to recognize that humanity is a single organism. We are so interconnected and interdependent that we have essentially become one. And indeed, there is a law that governs our reality, a spiritual law, if you like, or a social law for those who are not comfortable with the word spiritual. And just as the law of gravity operates on us, whether we like it or not, I can choose to ignore or deny the law of gravity. But if I try to build an airplane, not taking it into account, I'm not going to be successful, and it's actually going to be quite dangerous. Someone's going to get hurt. The same is true when we want to build our social institutions, our environmental, political, whatever, economic institutions. If we fail to take into account the law of oneness, these institutions and these systems are going to fail. Little wonder then that they're spectacularly failing all around us. All our systems around the world, I don't care what country you're in, they're all failing because of the failure of our leaders to take into account this law of oneness that regulates our social reality. I'm going to save the other opportunities for other lectures in this series or presentations. This is the first of 4. The next 3 weeks will be devoted to further examination of different ideas. And I also don't want to tire you. I do want to encourage you, if you can, and if you want to look at the book, if you liked what you saw today. The book in which all these ideas come from is called The Alchemy of Peace. It's available on Amazon and also at BahaiBookstore.com. So please share it with your friends, families, colleagues, and you're also welcome to join me on my Reimagining Our World series, which you can find on YouTube. At the YouTube channel CPGG, Center for Peace and Global Governance. So I am now going to stop sharing my screen, and hopefully we can have a conversation and I can learn from you. There we go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sovaida. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing those notes. I learned a lot. I really love the maturation analysis. And then the beautiful tools that you use to show that. Does anyone have any questions for Sovaida at this time? Please feel free to raise your hand or ask a question. All
See
right.
Mitch. Mm-hmm. I can't.
You're muted, Mitchell.
You're still muted, Mitch.
One minute. There we go. It might be.
It's not on our end, it's on his, because everyone here has access to unmute themselves and speak.
Yes, he's unmuted.
Maybe check which microphone you're using.
You can type your question in the chat, or maybe Christine can speak for you.
All right. In the meantime, while we wait, Payman.
So nice to see you, Sovaida. It's always you do such an amazing job. I was just trying to think with the social environment that we're going through now, and as far as political leaders, you would think that the COVID is bringing them closer, but you almost sometimes feel that they're maybe drifting a little bit further apart, and there's a little bit more animosity and with the recent events that have been happening with, I don't know, United States and France, and of course Russia and China. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that. since you're more in that environment. And does it have to get a lot worse before it gets better, or these are just signs of us going through maturity? And maybe I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and obviously I'm sure it's running through many people's minds. So I'll be spending a lot more time talking about those two particular topics on the leadership stuff in session 4 of this series of talks, and on the global relations stuff in session 3. However, to answer your question briefly right now, yes, you're obviously very accurate in what you perceive and see. So from the Baha'i viewpoint, this process of getting to peace and this process of maturation is it's described as a long, tortuous road that will have many gains and many reversals. So we're going to see ourselves sometimes sprinting ahead, and we've seen this, a few years ago, we thought, whoa, we're sailing, we're doing really well, right? And then there's going to be this very painful sliding back. You see this in your individual life. Think about habits that you want to inculcate. I know it's true for me. Simple things like healthy lifestyle, eating well, exercising, getting to bed on time. So there are times, for 2-3 months, I'm doing so well and I'm so methodical. And then, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm just eating lots of junk food. I'm staying up watching TV till 1 a.m, not exercising because I can't be bothered. And then the indicia of health, your cholesterol goes up and then it comes down, and your blood sugar goes up and it comes down. And so we start to see the effects of our behaviors. So the same is true. And in fact, there's a wonderful letter from the governing body of the Baha'i Faith, the Universal House of Justice, last year, in which they very openly acknowledged and said, we see that the rise of authoritarianism and nationalism, and then I think the way they couched it is they said the forces of disintegration seem to be temporarily gaining the upper hand. And then there's a beautiful phrase in there. They say, so be it. We as Baha'is know and believe that peace will come. Not only will it's absolutely inevitable, but we also recognize that we're on this path, like climbing a mountain. You climb and climb and climb, and then you hit a crevasse, or we have to walk all the way around, or the path is blocked because trees have fallen and you have to scramble over them, or there's scree that's come down the side. And I don't know if you've ever tried walking on this stuff, but as every step you take, the stones underneath your feet literally roll you back, and it's very slow going and dangerous. So that's what we're seeing. And this is next week's session, we do have a choice to turn this stuff around whenever we decide to start. And this, to me, this is the key point. And this is the point Amanda Gorman made, and this is the point that rapper was making, that we can choose to do something differently. So we need to get smarter about the leaders we elect, because clearly the leaders we have are not doing what they need to do. I'm going to cover that in session 4 of this series and explain all the mindsets and habits involved there. It's actually a really interesting session, so I encourage you all to come. And we need to also shift our mindsets around our world and our reality, and that again will be not next Sunday, the week after that. And then choice. I'm going to talk about choice and the importance of choice and the gift of choice and the imperative that we recognize that we have choice and that we harness it to make a difference. So thanks for your question, Payman. You're absolutely right, but we can't get despondent. See, that's the thing. It looks awful, but as Baha'is, we remain hopeful. We're not depressed, right? There's that lovely quotation from Shoghi Effendi, who was the second authorized interpreter of Baha'u'llah's writings and leader of the faith for a period of time, in which he says that as these events happen, to me, they include COVID and climate change, he says humanity will be confused, bewildered and upset and affected by it and confused. He said it's natural, we will be affected by it. We will be unhappy about it. But he says Baha'is do not need to be confused because we understand exactly why it's happening, what the purpose is, and where it will lead to. We may not understand all the details of how we're going to get there, but we know what the destination is. And that is the gift of hope that we offer our fellow human beings. I was hoping today, I don't see any, is there anyone from any interfaith groups? Because I think interfaith people really could relate to this material, and there would be some shared frameworks basically through which to see it. Anyway, so Mitchell, are you? Christine, are you going to talk on Mitch's behalf?
No, definitely not. I hold back. I think he's still working on it, how to get it to work. I don't know. This has never happened to us, so this is the first time.
Yeah.
So hopefully he'll get back on track.
Okay. Yeah.
We do have a youth in this space, Leva. Would you like to share anything or ask any questions or share your thoughts from a Gen Z or, Gen Z perspective?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Leva Amui.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
Paria?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just maybe while some of the friends are getting back and you brought up the question of youth, I actually recently had a conversation with a 14-year-old youth who was expressing how they are feeling extremely sad about the state of the world, and it has caused them to feel depressed about what is to come for them, and it's affecting them now. And we talked about a lot of the points you've made, Sovaida, but I wondered if you could kind of speak directly to youth, because I think the generation of youth and maybe their experiences as young minds growing in a difficult, challenging sphere in the world is different than someone who's already experienced challenges, might have had the wisdom to kind of walk through how challenges have developed us and really strengthened us, and that those tests, as you said, are great lessons and teachers of life. But what could we offer as an insight to a young mind that is really going through the fire of hardship and feeling depressed by that experience, and even though they're surrounded by such wonderful, positive other friends that this individual had, but how could we guide youth today to kind of navigate and to find the little steps to help them overcome? What would you suggest, and what insight do you think we could give as parents, teachers, and adults in a community to accompany them?
It's a great question, Paria, and really what the biggest audience I was writing for and talking to is actually this audience, because that's where I see so I see the statistics, and I talk to the young people. The statistics on mental health, on depression, on anxiety, and yesterday I was part of a course training on cognitive behavioral therapy. The OCD stats are also hockey sticking. It's really stunning, and it's happening. It's worse in this country than elsewhere. So let me start by saying, for those of us, especially in North America, youth, you have not suffered. You don't know the meaning of suffering. And that's not a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing in one way, but it's made us very self-involved. We focus a lot on self. We think that life owes us, right? Life owes us stuff. And when we don't get the stuff that we think life owes us, we get very either angry or depressed or both. And we start acting out or withdrawing. This is a hard lesson, but this is a good lesson. And yes, we may not have suffered so much till now, but this is your chance. View this as a chance to grow. Growth is painful. Growth is not easy. We're looking, the butterfly analogy, Pariat, works with young people, because if you're trying to become something greater, if you're trying to build the kind of world you want to work through, you've got to. It is just the way life works. A seed has to sacrifice itself and tear apart and go through that same goop for the tree to become manifest. And it's the same with our society. Our youth, or you dear youth, we have to get past being so self-involved. So the real solution to this depression is look past yourself and woe is me, and how is this affecting me? I don't get to be in school. I don't get to see my friends. I don't get to socialize. I don't get to go on trips. And think instead about people who are worse off than you. If you want to be happy, don't look at the people who are happier than you are and are better off than you are, or that you perceive to be better off, because believe me, they're not. They're posting stuff on social media. I have so many adult friends, when I go on their Facebook pages, you would think they had lives that were carefree and glamorous, because all you ever see are the trips they go on, the get-togethers they have, the beautiful clothes they're wearing, the beautiful landscapes they're in. But I know these people. And I know what messy lives they have. It is not all beautiful. And so don't be fooled by that. And so my recommendation directly to youth is put aside social media. Cancel your accounts. You'll be fine. Really, try it. And parents, be brave enough to start the detox. Start with 1 day a week. 1 day a week, put aside your gadget, put aside your computer. Then maybe 1 week out of the month, and then eventually they will come to love it so much that they will want to put it aside. The second thing is, as soon as you start feeling sorry for yourself, think about somebody who's worse off than you, and then reach out and do something for them. Contact them. That's the only thing social media should be used for, in my mind, is to reach out with uplifting, elevating thoughts, and with offers of help, and also to elicit, to get a sense of who it is out there that needs help. So look beyond yourself and get out there and do service, 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 service. So I would bet that any youth who is feeling downcast and depressed is not engaging with the outside world in true service. I don't mean just attend a junior youth group. Okay, these can be really pro forma things that we do. I mean, whether you're in a junior youth group or not, get out there and serve people. When you hear stories of how other people are really suffering, they don't have roofs over their heads, 8 people are sleeping in 1 bedroom, they don't have electricity, they don't have food to eat. All of a sudden, your problems of, oh, I don't get to hang out with my friends, pale into insignificance, seriously. I want to highlight this because it's not youth everywhere. There was a wonderful article, somebody had started traveling during COVID, had started doing research with young people in other parts of the world, because they were hearing so much in North America about mental health for young children, not being able to be in school and being trapped at home. And then they went to the Philippines, in Manila. So Manila is apparently, I've not been, is a big city, according to this journalist. where, you know, it's hard to find green spaces. So like finding places to go outdoors and meet your friends is impossible because, you know, many people live in the city where it's crowded. If you go out, you're in the middle of traffic and your kids are going to get run over, and there are no parks and, you know, not, as I say, not that many green spaces. And yet they said the young children were fine. They enjoyed being at home. They enjoyed being with their parents. They didn't feel trapped. And then they dug deeper to say, well, why is it the same category of young people in the United States is feeling trapped and angry and depressed, and I'm confined at home? And they realized it was about mindset, because the culture there is that you think about the good of the community before you think about yourself. And when they talked to these young children, it was like, yeah, we're doing this because we want everybody to be safe. I want my grandparents to be safe. I want my, you know, my community, my neighbors to be safe. So I'm fine with being at home. And anyway, I love being at home with my parents. So different from the messages we were getting here with young people just complaining, and then getting despondent because their lives have been disrupted. So I don't minimize. However, the truth is we're all in this together. The good news about COVID is that you are not the only people who are going to be deprived on climate change of economic opportunities coming down the pike. It's going to be the whole world, because we're all on this boat and we're all either going to sink together or float together. And therefore, we want to stiffen the spine of our young people and say, okay, given that you now understand we're all in this together, what are you going to do to make this world a better place? Take your bit of responsibility and lend your shoulder to helping this. And that in that way, build resilience. We need to build resilience in our young people. It's sorely lacking. So it's a hard one. I see it too. I see it in the college population as well. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We haven't had time to do internships. We haven't had time, you know, we haven't been in school. We didn't get jobs. Now we're graduating. Oh my gosh, how are we going to get a job? How are we going to work? How are we going to support ourselves? So yeah, these are real questions. And it is what it is. Acceptance. There's nothing we can do about the reality except think about now, what can we do to make it better? No one can wave a magic wand to make this go away. I hope it wasn't too harsh, but we really need to help stiffen the spines of our young people.
No, that definitely was truth. That's why I shared a heart. It was what we needed to hear. So thank you for sharing that. So if we do not have any more questions at this time, we are going to transition to our closing prayer. And following that, we will say our final salutations and announcements.
This is the night, the like of which hath never been witnessed in the world of creation. This is the night wherein the Spirit intones such a melody. This is the night wherein the mystic dove raised its call upon the branches and boughs of heaven. Rejoice, O concourse on high. Rejoice, O denizens of paradise. Rejoice, so embodiments of sanctity, rejoice, rejoice. This is the night wherein the oceans of forgiveness surge, and the breezes of providence were wafted abroad. This is the night wherein every trace of sorrow might be banished forever. This is the night wherein the trespasses of all that dwell on earth were forgiven. Hasten then, O concourse of men, and drink your fill from the stream of everlasting life. Rejoice, O concourse on high. Rejoice, O denizens of paradise. Rejoice, O embodiments of sanctity. Rejoice, rejoice. Rejoice, O concourse on high. Rejoice, O denizens of paradise. Rejoice, O embodiments of sanctity. Rejoice, rejoice.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to our sister Sovaida Mayani Ewing for sharing such powerful and insightful wisdom with us today. And next week, you can join us for part 2 of this series. It's going to be a 4-part series. So please stick with us for the next 4 weeks to learn more about how we can change and transition to better our mindsets with the virtue of peace. And also with that, I hope everyone have an amazing week. Be blessed and be peaceful. Love you all. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Lots of love to all of you. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.